Hey you guys, it's Wrench, and welcome back to Balancing the Medical Meta, the series where I present rebalance ideas for some underpowered or underused medic weapons so that they can be potentially useful and competitively viable. Keep in mind these are just my personal opinions and ideas, and I don't expect everyone to agree with them. Also keep in mind my competitive perspective is from North American UGC, so depending on where you're from, yours might be drastically different. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The Quickfix is in a weird place right now. It's not underpowered, but it can certainly be underwhelming. On episode 1 of Balancing the Medical Meta, a commenter said something that intrigued me. They said, every syringe gun has a hidden downside. It's not the crossbow. This really struck a chord with me and got me thinking. In the case of mediguns, the stock medigun heavily dominates the competitive scene for the simple reason that no other medigun grants invulnerability. The Quickfix's current stats are, Ubercharge increases healing by 300% and grants immunity to movement impairing effects, plus 40% heal rate, plus 10% Ubercharge rate, and 50% max overheal. The Quickfix now more than ever sits in the dark while the medigun dominates the American competitive scene, because while it used to fill the niche role of allowing the medic to match his heal patient's speed, all mediguns were buffed to allow the medic to do this in the Meet Your Match update. While this universal medigun buff was a fantastic quality of life change for medics in general, it drove the Quickfix even further into the ground in comparison with the stock medigun. Its only unique traits now are its healing and build rates, its actual Ubercharge, and its ability to carry the medic with explosive jumping heal patients. And let's not forget that its Uber is pretty much worse than the stock Uber no matter how you slice it. This, combined with the fact that all medigun Ubers disallow point capping where only the stock medigun's invulnerability used to, makes the Quickfix generally undesirable outside of a casual pub setting. When the Quickfix's Uber did allow point capping, it was a beast, and since it granted immunity to movement impairing effects, it made for some easy cheeky caps if your team worked together. It serves no incredibly unique purpose anymore, and the stock medigun's lack of healing speed in comparison can easily be compensated for with some well-placed crossbow shots. Since I'm mostly a pub scrub with a tidbit of high-level 6's experience, I asked my good friend and medic mentor 𝐒𝐂𝐃𝐈𝐀 for his thoughts on the Quickfix and its current competitive viability. Here's his take on it.
Side note, 𝐒𝐂 was asked to record this very last minute and he does not have access to a computer currently, so big thanks to him for finding a way to get this to me.
So basically, the Quickfix used to be the only medic gun used in 6v6 TF2, because it was overpowered. It could heal insanely fast, had a higher build rate than any other medigun, and increased the medic's mobility a ton. It was the go-to gun for a fast roll. The reason it isn't competitively viable in today's 6's meta is largely due to the recent nerfs to the weapon. The speed boost is no longer an upgrade because all miniguns have this upside. The limited overheal causes a lot of problems in heavy DM fights, and the Uber, of course, doesn't grant invulnerability. It's just not as good as a crit streak or Uber at getting stuff done. It's now more of a little gimmick to maybe get better positioning, but I don't believe I have ever seen someone use a Quickfix Uber to push into a well-defended last hold. The enemy team would all be able to out-DM the Quickfix Uber if they're all competent. Another terrible thing about the Quickfix is that if you're holding last and you pop a Quickfix Uber on the point, the enemy is still able to capture. In my opinion, the Quickfix is a great gun to use, in pubs, etc. And I personally like it a lot. The only problem is that it's just not as viable in today's current competitive scene, especially since every other medic will be running stock Uber 80% of the time and the crit streak 20% of the time. Being a Highlander medic player as well, where this weapon is not banned, I can tell you that it is very situationally used. Primarily when you're at an extreme Uber disadvantage and you want to kite their Uber by popping and flashing everyone to keep their health up after the initial kite, you'd go back to stock or crit streak to gain another advantage. The Quickfix is exactly that, a quick fix. Much like a protein shake is a quick fix for protein, but you can never replace the meat and potatoes with a shake. However, I do think Quickfix should be unbanned in 6's, because after its nerf, it's just going to be a mobility weapon, which will allow for some cool medic rollouts and maybe some better positioning on certain maps.
Going off of what 𝐒𝐂 said, there doesn't seem to be one easy way to balance this weapon. You could give it a unique attribute of being the only medigun allowed to cap points while Ubering, but since none of the other mediguns do this now, it could, in my opinion, make the weapon too powerful and competitive. I've seen what the growth of dive comps has done in Overwatch competitive, and I'd really hate to see the same thing happen to TF2. If this medigun were allowed to cap points during Uber, I can easily see scenarios where teams would simply blitz the objective after a bit of building and use Quickfix Ubers to quickly take control of points and easily deal with the enemy combo before stock Ubers even have the opportunity to build. To avoid this potentially game-breaking shift in the meta, because let's remember my goal here is to make the weapons both competitively viable and allowed, making the weapon potentially overpowered only checks one of those boxes. I would instead add some some entirely new stats, and adjust current stats to compensate, to change the weapon's intended utility entirely. My suggested stats are plus 30% heal rate, plus 10% ubercharge rate, plus 20% speed to the medic and heal patient during ubercharge, no ubercharge penalty on heal patient switch, 50% max overheal, and plus 30% fall damage dealt to wearer. As Sock said, competitively, the Quickfix was exactly what it sounded like. It could allow a medic to catch up when at a major uber disadvantage, but afterwards he would switch back to the medigun or 𝐒𝐃𝐈𝐀 as soon as possible. The weapon was a quick fix for a major uber disadvantage and was otherwise just inferior. This is the biggest issue plaguing the weapon. It doesn't do anything particularly well aside from its boosted heal/uber charge rate, neither of which matter much given its uber doesn't grant invulnerability, so it's incredibly situational, and the 50% reduced max overheal is the nail in the coffin. Of course, any variation of the medigun will be situational to some degree, but the added speed bonus during the uber charge, as I suggested, might be just what is needed to push this weapon into the competitive limelight. The speed boost would allow the uber to be used for what it once was, quickly capping points while the enemy does everything in their power to stop you, ideally to no avail if the uber is used right. This speed boost, in tandem with no uber charge penalty on heal patient switch, allows the medic to quickly flash teammates and boost their speeds for speedy pushes to points. Picture a situation where the enemy team was wiped and your team quickly caps second point, but normally the enemies would have a good chance to respawn and set up defenses before you were able to move the majority of your team into last point. With this new quick fix, the medic can move most, if not all, of his teammates into the last point incredibly quickly, at the very least allowing your team to disrupt the respawning enemy's defenses much quicker than would previously be possible. This gives the quick fix some special utility that applies to far more situations than simply, well, I'm at a major uber disadvantage, might as well swap to the quick fix and go for a Hail Mary. The speed bonus also boosts the survivability of the heal target and, more importantly, the medic. The problem with quick fix ubers is their lack of survivability. If the enemy is focusing enough damage on one recipient of the quick fix uber, they can still outdamage its boosted heal rate and come out with some kills. With this added 20% speed, the combo can move around erratically and avoid taking huge amounts of burst damage that would normally bring a swift end to many quick fix ubers. In order to balance out this huge buff to the quick fix, I've reduced its healing bonus from plus 40% to plus 30%, and I have added a new negative attribute, plus 30% fall damage dealt to wearer. This added negative attribute is an indirect nerf to the quick fix's ability to carry the medic with charging and explosive jumping teammates. With this stat, if the pocket's jump isn't coordinated perfectly, the medic can end up taking some hefty fall damage. This nerf needed to happen because with the speed bonus granted during ubercharge, the combo could pull off some insane jumps, and I didn't want to see this weapon turn into a powerful jack of all trades, which has the combo flying all over the map, fragging the poor enemy team, who can't really do much short of a well-placed sentry or coked up heavy with a pro gamer mouse. So, to recap, the old quick fix's stats focused on boosting the speed of the medic's healing and ubercharge rate, and his ability to follow after explosive jumping teammates, at the cost of reduced overheal and no invulnerability during ubercharge. My quick fix's stats would focus on granting mobility to the medic and his heal patient during ubercharge, with the added bonus of increased heal and ubercharge build rates, at the cost of reduced overheal and extra fall damage dealt to the medic. This supports a fast-paced, point-rushing playstyle if your team is coordinated enough, and introduces a new reason to use the quick fix uber over the stock uber, which it previously was objectively inferior to in every possible way aside from the time it took to reach. Ultimately, a fundamental change to the utility of the quick fix's uber is what I believe it needs to even be considered a competitor to the medigun. Otherwise, it'll just be a worse version of the medigun once both teams have reached full uber. My numbers may not be perfect, but I do think my concept is solid and I did my best to balance it properly. That's everything I have for you today, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I would love to hear some of your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree with my ideas, or do you have some of your own that you'd rather see implemented? Please keep in mind that the goal here is to make them both competitively viable and allowed. Avoid changing stuff that might shift the meta too much, especially for medic, as those are likely to be banned by competitive leagues. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to check out my Discord server and Twitter, linked in the description, and I'll see you guys later. Take it easy. As well as checking out my socials linked below, I'd recommend checking out Dr. 𝐒𝐿, who's the musician that made the song you're listening to right now. He's a great friend of mine and a very talented musician. His SoundCloud is linked below, so please do check him out.